the special on Friday. Have you had a chance to see it?
I didn't see the entire thing, but I saw most of it, yes.
I guess give us your initial reaction to what you saw in the piece.
My initial reaction is there are some things that we did wrong, and we are correcting those as we speak. Some of those things were corrected back in early 2018 as far as communication between our officers out there, our dispatchers, and some of those things are corrected as of late.
Gotcha. And when we talk about communication, should I forward those questions to Deborah?
Sure.
Communications.
Yeah.
Deborah, have you been able to watch the special?
No, I'm sorry, I haven't been able to watch it.
What kinds of communication implements have you had? Is it new technology?
Since 2006.
call is dispatched out there. So in a nutshell, it's a communications issue, not just for the communications section, but for the division as a whole, on how we get the information in, how our call takers put all the information available into that assignment that goes to a dispatcher, and how that dispatcher communicates with supervisors on the scene, on the street, as well as officers on the street. So we're taking a look at that process from start to finish, from the time that call comes in to the time we actually send the car out there, and even further than that, to the time that car actually communicates back to dispatch as to what's going on.
So all of that will be tracked?
Yes. As I stated earlier, there's an internal investigation on this particular incident going on. You know, we get hundreds of thousands of calls for service a year. So we want all those calls for services to be handled in a proper manner, and this wasn't. So we have an internal investigation, and then we'll find out what happened with everybody involved, from the call taker to the officers on scene, and if there's accountability measures to be taken, then we'll take those.
And I appreciate the candor on that. It's one of those things where when you hear Melissa say, and I guess I'll start with you, Chief, I feel like the system is failing me. That's not what the system's set up for, right? What goes through your mind when you hear a victim saying, what about me?
Well, of course, you know, our main concern is the victim, and especially in a crime of violence like this. And I have to point out that, you know, shortly after this happened, with, of course, the work of yourself and your folks and other citizens on the street, this male was apprehended shortly after it happened. You know, when he goes through the system, there are other things that happen that are beyond our control. And then when, you know, the second issue comes up and making the arrest after a warrant is issued, we're looking at the entire process to make sure we do a better job.
One thing we noticed when we went to visit his home and we knocked on the door, he answered. There were 2 warrants out for his arrest. How does that warrant system play out? Because the officers came, they didn't have a search warrant, obviously. They banged on the door. Another supervisor came out, and then they sort of just walked away. Could they have called somebody who does serve warrants and say, hey, this guy is right behind the door?
Well, again, that's a part of the process. I don't think we can get too deep into it. But in a nutshell, you know, you can't make an arrest even on a warrant unless you actually can say beyond a reasonable doubt that that person is actually in that residence. You know, for somebody to answer the door, or for us to have suspicion that, yeah, that person is in there, we have to have a little bit more than that. We have officers that do, as their specialty, go out and arrest people on fugitive warrants. Part of our review and part of our process going forward is to make sure that those certain units are included on incidents such as this, because they do have a certain expertise on how to do certain things that our zone car personnel don't do on a routine basis.
Gotcha. And we'll go down the line. This will be, I know you guys are pressed for time, but we'll start with Deborah here. Deborah, what do you take away from a situation like this as somebody who's in command of communications?
Commander Cabot.
Commander, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Commander Cabot.
I just look at it as we could have handled this call a little bit more professional than we did. I listened to some of the call taking audio, and we could have handled it more professional. We could have been more diligent in expediting the actual response of the zone car to the area. And plus, with the mobile CAD technology upgrade that's taken place since then, I think that the officers on the streets will have more information as to what basically they're responding to. And we're always increasing technology in our communications. And I believe that, you know, once we do that, we're going to, you know, be in a better situation to handle this call in the future.
Awesome. And Commander, what do you take away from this experience?
Well, I'll know more once our internal investigation is completed. Clearly, as I stated earlier, communication is critical from the call takers that initially took your call, and a number of calls, I think, from maybe your producer and maybe your camera person. I'm not sure, editor, who all the folks were, but I think getting that information, getting it out to the zone cars, and having them coordinate that information really is important. For this fellow to be out on the street for 2 hours was probably unacceptable. We're going to know for sure, but I would have liked to see my officers get there much more quickly. And then when it came to you guys waiting 3.5 or 4 hours, believing that this individual was at the residence with the warrant, I would have liked to see my officers get there more quickly. So once we have the review completed, we have all that information, we're going to take a look at it. If there's something we can and should do better, we're going to.
Great. And Chief, any final thoughts here? Anything you might want to add? I may have been. Look, let me ask you this, because this particular issue, I mean, it hits you pretty personally, right? Domestic violence.
Definitely.
Do you want to
Well,
talk
as I
about
said
how
before,
important that is? Yeah.
Well, you know, not to single myself out.
No,
but as I said before, you know, every victim is important, and our response to this particular case is problematic. I mean, a 3-hour response time to probably 99.9% of the calls we receive is totally unacceptable. And we're putting things in place to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Well said. Anybody else have anything else they might want to add? I may have missed. You want to emphasize? Thank you so much for sitting down with us. Oh, yes. I'm sorry.
Bigger picture. Is domestic violence enough of a priority? I mean, that's
domestic
probably
violence,
the takeaway.
any crime of violence is a priority for the Division of Police.
Mm-hmm.
Any crime of violence, period.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing, because we talked to the City Council, and they're working to budget for, to help staff more of your specialty units.
Okay.
Have you heard this yet, or
Well, I know we're going through the budget reconciliation process right now, so I really can't comment on where it's at.
Okay,
but,
I got you.
I know we have our request in for, you know, our budgeted amount for a Division of Police, and we're hoping that gets approved.
Yeah, they were mentioning that the special units may be understaffed at this point. Is that true?
Well, there is understaffing within the division, but as I said, we have about 111 cadets in session right now, which is going to greatly increase our staffing number and hopefully put us above by the time those folks graduate. So we will be able to staff up appropriately.
Great. Thank you guys
All right,
so much.
thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.